Regardless of what your culinary habits and fashion taste are, it is obvious that you cannot completely disassociate yourself from palm oil, the core product of all palm nuts. The same applies to its derivatives, and that is why we considered it necessary to devote a mini-series to showcasing what is being done by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to restore the lost glory of the oil palm sector and ease the huge burden that the continued importation of palm oil has been exerting on the economy of the nation. Good evening and welcome to You and the Economy. Of course, my name is Chinemerem Joseph. Now, in today's edition of the program, we'll bring you the concluding episode of our mini-series on the interventions of the CBN in the oil palm sector. Among other things, we shall look at what the future has in stock for the sector if the momentum of the intervention measures of the CBN is sustained and if all stakeholders collaborate with the Apex Bank to ensure that the success of those measures are sustained. One thing is certain, though, regardless of the challenges and strong odds it may experience in turning the fortunes of the sector around, the CBN will not drop the ball and shall remain focused until its objectives are achieved. Here now is the concluding episode on restoring the lost glory of the oil palm sector.
When the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, set out to intervene in the oil palm subsector to roll back its decades of declining fortunes, the Apex Bank clearly rolled out the goals it sought to achieve with the initiative. As would be expected, the imperative to eliminate the importation of the commodity by introducing 4 region measures to increase domestic output was one of those goals. Yet another equally important objective was job creation. But due to the relatively long period it takes to cultivate palm trees to maturity, many observers had concluded that the gestation period of a minimum of 3.5 years and maximum of 7 years that it takes to raise palm trees will be the waiting time for the expected benefits of job creation to manifest. Yet, this projection is not true. As you will now hear from credible sources who are in the know of this subject, the goal of employment generation is already being met. This milestone, we were told, has been made possible by the measures introduced by the CBN to persuade a host of state governments to provide expansive swaths of land to players in the subsector to cultivate new farms and plantations and expand existing ones. Also responsible for the attainment of employment generation, even at this nascent stage of the intervention, is the easier access the CBN has granted these players to draw from its regime of single-digit loans. The loan facilities are made available through deposit money banks and other designated financial institutions, as well as the dedicated Oil Palm Intervention Development Fund.
Typical hectare of oil palm plantation, there are 3 jobs. So if you look at Ondo State alone, which is committed to 350,000 hectares, you're looking at close to 1 million jobs, on aggregates that are going to be working at the plantation in one form or the other. So the likes of PZ Wuma do fields that will finance the thousands of jobs.
The fact that because we increased the size of our oil mill here, as well as putting the new oil mills that I've just mentioned into play, we are probably going to be employing about another 160 to 200 people directly. In terms of the plantation, which I mentioned, the DCRR loan helped us in putting into the ground. there was nothing before. So we have now got nearly 10,000 hectares of palm. That's going to be putting directly, probably in the region of 1,000 to 2,000 people into work, and indirectly you probably multiply that by a factor of 5. So there is a lot of benefit that has come as a result of it, and we see it. The surrounding communities, for instance, are benefiting, not only because we are doing corporate social responsibility programs with them, but also because the people that are there can and are able to get jobs. They're also able to become contractors, suppliers, and the like. So there is a multiplier effect that affects everybody, hopefully beneficially. So we've definitely seen that, and I think that by giving us these loans, government will see now and in the future a benefit definitely in terms of improving the ability for people to get work.
We are beginning to look inwards to create more jobs. And people who used to buy from outside are now buying locally. Okay? So with that, we are creating more employment.
So we are creating wealth in the rural sector as such and putting money into people's hands who will ordinarily produce. And then also we are creating job opportunities, because there's a lot of job opportunities that's created along the value chain. With more income for Nigerians, the more tax they pay, the better they're able to pay tax, and that tax goes to government, and government now has money to do other things, you know.
It is indeed an incontrovertible fact that some of the key goals of the intervention of the CBN in the oil palm subsector are already being realized. However, the core objective of the intervention is to eliminate the current demand deficit experienced by consumers of oil palm products, a gap which has made Nigeria a net importer of palm oil, the primary product derived from processing oil palm fruits, as well as some derivatives of the crop. And the target date set for ramping up output from 1.25 million metric tons per annum to 2.5 million metric tons is latest 2026. This is based on the well-informed projection that a substantial percentage of the hundreds of thousands of palm seeds and seedlings planted after the CBN flagged off the implementation of its intervention measures would have not only grown to maturity, but would also have started bearing fruits by then. But some observers have been wondering whether this target is really achievable. Philip Yila Yusuf is the Director, Development Finance Department of the Central Bank of Nigeria. In the continued discharge of the responsibilities of his portfolio, Yusuf has played critical roles in the implementation of the intervention measures of the CBN in the oil palm subsector. Based on his profound experience, the CBN Director of Development Finance has given a strong assurance that the core goal of the intervention of the CBN in the subsector will be realized. Yusuf based his conviction on the unwavering determination of the CBN to continue to create opportunities in the subsector by collaborating with stakeholders to provide land for the development of new oil palm farms and plantations, and the heartwarming results recorded in that regard to date. Yusuf also hinged the realization of the target on his strong belief that the Apex Bank shall remain unyielding in its commitment to granting easier access to its regime of single-digit credit windows and the dedicated fund for revamping the subsector for eligible players to raise funds. And all these, Yusuf believes, will ensure that the core target is met.
Now, given what you know, would you say these laudable goals are achievable?
Absolutely, and I think that will be one of the legacies of Governor Emefiele. Unlock more land, work with the state governments to provide land. CBN will provide the funding at concessionary rate. Today is at 5%, and you can't get that kind of funding anywhere. And work with other relevant parties in the ecosystem to ensure that you get the funds quickly, you get the land, employ people, and begin to cultivate. So the opportunities can always, they're there to be taken.
Joe Onyuke is the national president of the Oil Palm Growers Association of Nigeria. Speaking to you and the economy, Onyuke expressed his belief that the target of boosting total output to 2.5 million metric tons per annum by 2026 will be achieved.
They are very achievable. For us in oil palm growers association in Nigeria, we have already positioned ourselves to lead this revolution. We have members across 27 states of this country. And we have existing plantations that we are currently working to maintain properly.
The board of trustees of this association met and they approved a program designed by the national executive of one household, 20 palm trees program. All we need the Central Bank of Nigeria to do, work with us, let us develop seedlings and give to households. Let them plant. Before you know it, Nigeria will be populated with palm trees. And we can achieve over 50 million in 1 year. It's achievable. We have the farmers, we have the processors, we have the membership across the country. All we need is seedlings and inputs.
It certainly is achievable. Growing the industry, because we consume palm oil as a commodity. Because we consume it as a commodity, it means that for a commodity that you consume, you must be able to produce that. And if you don't produce it, that means you have to look for it elsewhere. Achieving it means that you now have, you're attracting players into the sector, and people who ordinarily will look elsewhere will then look into it and say, this is a sector we can play into. There is now a greater awareness that you can do oil palm as a business, and you also are confident that it's a business that will grow where you can earn income for life. So I think with all this awareness, that's achievable.
I'm sure that we will go, if not the whole way, certainly to a large degree towards minimizing the paucity of the product that we currently have locally, and making sure that we get back to the former glory days, as you mentioned, where Nigeria is not running around 5th or 6th in the world in terms of production, but hopefully maybe 1st or 2nd again. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's impossible.
Surely, given all what you have seen so far on this mini-series, the goals of the CBN intervention in the oil palm subsector are really achievable. But the outpouring of optimism expressed to that effect is not enough to make the realization of the goal a fait accompli. A serious challenge, however, stands in the way of actualizing the goal of attaining the targeted output of 2.5 million metric tons of palm oil annually by 2026. That challenge, which must be addressed to enable the enforcement of a 100% ban on the importation of palm oil by the target date, is how to modernize the rudimentary methods adopted by small-scale processors, many of whom are also smallholder oil palm farmers, to extract palm oil from oil palm fruits. For if processing methods remain undeveloped, the extracted quantity of palm oil, the primary product derived from processing oil palm fruits, may end up being largely disproportionate to and bear no significant impact on the increased output of oil palm fruits expected, beginning from 2023. This is regardless of how high that output may be. And if these largely inefficient methods continue to be the signpost of the oil processing arm of the oil value chain, which is largely dominated by small-scale processors, importation may well continue still, making the intervention a near fruitless effort. Dr. Celestine Ikonobe is Executive Director of NIFO, an agronomist and crop research scientist. Dr. Ikonobe welcomes the intervention of the CBN in the oil palm subsector, describing it as a step in the right direction. The NIFO Executive Director, however, advises policymakers to be cognizant of the need to revamp the informal methods commonly used at the moment in extracting palm oil from palm fruits by small-scale processors and replace them with relatively modern methods that generate optimum extraction to further guarantee the success of the CBN intervention.
Today, we know the seeds that we have under Nigerian condition, even under very poor management practices, can yield for you anything between 20 to 30 metric tons of fruits. Now, in terms of the oil that will come out of that will depend on the extraction efficiency or the material of the machines you use or the methods and technologies that you use to process. Now, if you use a very high technology process that can give between 20 to 25% extraction, so if we assume just a 20% extraction, so we're already assuming that a farmer can get between 4 to 6 metric tons of oil in 1 hectare from materials we are already giving. That's on a baseline of 20% extraction rate, but you could be better. But what here happens is that farmers use material, the technologies they use actually extracts far less, sometimes about 9%, sometimes about 8%, at best 10 to 12% of that. So you find they're not really extracting all the oils out of it at the time. So that's one aspect we have to also address. So better milling processes, we can increase the volume.
As its contributions towards eradicating the use of contraptions by players in the small-scale processing arm of the oil palm value chain that hardly extract the minimum expected volume of palm oil from oil palm fruits, the Agricultural Engineering and Research Division of NIFA fabricated this very efficient processing machine for oil palm processing. The machine, which is easily operable by even the illiterate, after undergoing basic training on its usage, is designed to achieve high extraction rate of palm oil. To demonstrate its confidence in the efficacy of the machine, NIFA uses it to process palm oil in its own in-house oil mill. The Research Institute hopes to receive enough financial support from the CBN to enable it mass-produce the machine so that small-scale processors can acquire them at affordable prices. This will subsequently help in making the goal of deriving increased output from palm oil processing yet another concrete reality.
NIFA came out with some equipment which exists in 3 categories. We had one of 1 ton per hour, we had one of 0.5 ton per hour, and then we have the one of 0.25 ton per hour. And you can cater for oil palm plantation of 100 hectares and above. In fact, using this equipment could produce high quality palm oil that can meet international standard. Using the NIFA equipment, from 1 ton of a fresh fruit bunch, you can get about 800 to 1,000 liters of palm oil, which is an improvement over the local techniques, whereby from 1 ton of fresh fruit bunch, you get about 400 to 600 liters of palm oil. So that is an improvement over the local production techniques. In order to step up palm oil production, if CBN would support NIFA by giving out what is called seed money, so that from this seed money, then they can produce this equipment, and then it will be on shelf so that those people that are interested in getting this equipment, they will not be waiting, they just come, pay, and then pick what they are paid for.
Yet another thorny issue that must be addressed to guarantee the success of the intervention of the CBN in the oil palm subsector is the fear expressed by smallholder oil palm farmers that implementation of the initiative is skewed in favor of big corporate bodies to their own alleged neglect. Smallholder farmers reason that since they constitute 70 or even 80% of the total number of players in the subsector, an attempt to ignore such a huge component of active participants may spell doom for the success of the intervention.
This gap actually can only be covered by smallholder farmers. By the time we have more inclusion with the smallholder farmers who control 80%, 70 to 80% of the market, then we triple the gap. We will close the gap and we triple the production. And then Nigeria will be able to export once more and take back our glory.
In further analyzing the issue of the alleged lack of access of smallholder farmers to the intervention fund of the CBN in comparison with corporate players, Onyuke admits that the CBN did not structure its intervention fund and other concessionary credit facilities to exclude smallholder oil palm farmers from the onset. Rather, he is of the view that smallholder farmers currently have challenges in accessing the funds the way they would have wanted because their businesses are not usually formally organized. This flaw, according to Inyuke, makes it difficult for banks to relate with and grant them credit as quickly as they would prefer.
The Central Bank of Nigeria, under Emefiele, has been very, very supportive and creative in finding ways and means to make these smallholder farmers to be eligible to access funding from commercial banks, which ordinarily they can never get, because they can't get it at all because of the way they are structured. So as an association, our major task is to organize our members to make them bankable. When you become bankable, then you'll be able to access this funding. Because it's not just to go and say, oh, you have CBN intervention, you must give me money. How about paying back the money? It's not a grant. These are public funds. So if money is given to an association for its small scale members, the job of the association is to ensure that those funds, which come by way of input and services, to go down to the grassroots. Since the smallholder farmers control over 70 to 80% of the industry, it only makes sense that we double our efforts to take back our glory, the national pride that all of us in the Oil Palm Growers Association of Nigeria have taken as a challenge to organize ourselves and make ourselves bankable. With the kind of training we are getting right now, which was never there before, with the kind of support we are getting right now, which was never there before, it's very easy to achieve.
The impact of population growth is another factor that must be taken into strong consideration, especially as it relates to the realization of the targeted goal of the CBN intervention to raise output of oil palm production to 2.5 million metric tons per annum by 2026 and promote self-sufficiency by that set target. According to available records, when the intervention was flagged off in 2019, total demand for oil palm was 2.5 million metric tons, while supply was initially 800,000 metric tons. Supply later rose to 1.25 metric tons, thus narrowing the deficit to another 1.25 million metric tons per annum. However, fears are being expressed that the attempt to close the deficit may continue to be a mirage if the target of the intervention is not raised to above 2.5 million metric tons. This fear is made real and credible by Nigeria's huge population, which is estimated to be growing at 3% per annum. As a result, it is believed that by 2026, the country's population may render the 2.5 million metric tons target unrealistic in erasing the demand deficit, as demand is guaranteed to have ballooned further by then. We end this mini-series with an advisory on how the challenge posed by increasing population and the attendant increase in demand for oil palm products can be addressed, so that even if both trends subsist, the CBN objective of achieving self-sufficiency in oil palm products, particularly palm oil, will still be realized.
The goal of achieving 2.5 million tons of oil production, local production of oil by 2025, that goal will still fall short of our needs, because by 2025 or 2026, our demand will be higher than what it is presently. The Nigerian population is growing. So a child who is 4 years old now will be 8 years and will demand more palm oil then. A child who is 1 year now will be 4 years old then, or 5 years old, and will demand more palm oil. So because it's going to demand biscuits, it's going to demand a lot of foods, confectionery, so it's going to demand even food. And they're going to demand more of pasta, more of noodles than they take now. So, and the noodle industry is growing, and the noodle industry is hinged on palm oil. So you can see that the demand will still be high. So we still need to do more, a lot more on that, and then expand the industry itself, and along the line also do a lot of replanting of the old plantations, which we need to do now, between now and that time.
You're welcome back. We sure believe you enjoyed our mini-series on what is being done by the Apex Bank in collaboration with relevant stakeholders to turn around the fortunes of the oil palm sector and reposition it as the new crude oil of the nation. We know that some of our viewers may wish to share their opinions and views with us on the mini-series on the oil palm sector. Well, we urge you to do so by logging onto the CBN website. It's www.cbn.gov.ng, or call us on the CBN Contact Center on 0700 225 5226. Please be sure we shall attend to you. Join us again, same time next week on You and the Economy, when we shall focus on a new subject that you are sure to find very interesting. Thanks again so much for watching, and goodbye.